freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, Cheryl Todd here from Gun Freedom Radio, and I am excited today because I'm being mocked by my good friend Dianna Muller of the DC Project. Welcome to the show, Dianna.
Gun Freedom Radio. We just like to say that. We think you're really cool.
And you do it way better than I do, so I'm going to be taking lessons. So the DC Project, this is your brainchild. This is your baby. This baby is only, 4 or 5 years old?
We have been to DC 4 times as a big group, and you, of course, have been there 5 because you were part of the original crew that I took as leaders that we needed to figure out what we were going to do, how to do it. And so we had a group of 12, 14 people maybe that first year trying to train our leaders up that first February. And then our first trip, our first big trip was 2016 and the summer of 2016.
So take us back to that time before the DC Project existed and tell us what it is and why you were so passionate to bring it to life.
Well, I think before it existed, I was a very common American, and I was very happy in my happy spot of, really no enemies per se. I didn't pay attention to politics. We are basking in all of this freedom, and until recently, I haven't really started paying attention and really realizing that, there are people and there are forces in this world that want to strip us of our constitutionally guaranteed rights to protect ourselves with our firearms. So, and really, you've heard me tell the story, but I'll tell you again. A friend of mine, I was in DC as a tourist, and a friend of mine that Jane Horton, said, "Do you want to meet your congressman?" Jane does a lot of work with Blue Star families, and now she's actually working for the administration, the Trump administration, and the Defense Department, and advising on those things for Gold Star families. So she was very well connected in DC, and she said, "Do you want to meet your congressman?" And it was really like, I guess that's what you do when you're in DC. So it was during that conversation with my congressman, Stephen Russell, that I was like, is there something that we as professional shooters should be doing to educate these people who are making really big decisions that involve me? Mm-hmm. And that's where it started. He's like, yeah, I think you should. And he actually said, you should probably go after the antis or the people that think that they do want to put restrictions on us. And I was like, you know what? The people that are pro 2A, they need to hear from us as well. So I really wanted from the very beginning it to be a bipartisan effort. And like I said, I thought it was going to be professional shooters. Hey, let's go as professional shooters. We're very easy to vet. We can speak, professionally about firearms. And God had a much bigger plan for us. So now I have a true cross-section of America of women that represent the Second Amendment in so many different facets.
Absolutely. Well, I was fortunate to hear about the DC Project before I had ever even met you. And when I got a sense of what it was you were trying to do, I basically begged you. I was like, please, oh, please, let me be a part of this, because I'm thinking I'm not a professional shooter, and maybe that's all you're looking for. And I'm not a competitive shooter. We own a gun shop. I have this radio show. So I'm like trying to play the angle like, hey, let me be a fly on the wall and help tell your story. And thank goodness you weren't, kind of locked on, thank goodness for me, you weren't locked on the idea,
right,
particularly of professional competitive shooters, because this has been one of the most incredible growth journeys of my personal life, is realizing myself, how, I would vote, I would pay attention, I would vote, and I knew what I was voting for and about, but to actually, impose myself on, the time of our elected official, that just felt like, why would I do that? Let them get their work done. I don't want people plopping themselves in my office when I'm trying to work.
right.
But I had it mixed up. They need to hear from us, right? How can they represent?
They do. They are a representative. So if they're in a microcosm or a little bubble of people, then they're only listening to those people, then it's really done a disservice on us being conservative, I believe. We don't impose ourselves. We don't want to be, we're too nice, or we're too, it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and conservative type people do not squeak. So it's kind of backfired on us, honestly, that we aren't out there beating the drums, and not that I want to act like idiots and make fools of ourselves, but we certainly do need to engage. And you know what? 4 years later, after we started this, we've got 2 women running for Congress next year. And I think that's huge. And I really think that that's what we should at least explore within the DC Project Women. Who is interested, who has the bandwidth, and let's get you some training. Maybe the DC Project can be actually a breeding ground for really good Second Amendment women going to serve the country.
That would be an incredible thing to have happen, because we talk about being conservative, and a lot of our delegates are conservative, but not all of them. And so
right.
How does that even work in this divided world that we're living in, where we're supposed to, not even associate ourselves with somebody that doesn't 100% align with all of my political thinkings? How on earth have you been able to bring together women from all along the spectrum of political ideation and have us play nice together and think about possibly growing up legislators out of a group like that? That's an incredible feat.
Well, that's been a learning process for me too, because I'm in my own bubble and my own microcosm here. So, and I've taken missteps when it comes to thinking that it's just a conservative effort. So I can remember Lara Smith. I can remember being at a Girl and a Gun national conference, and I said something about the libtards, and she's like, that would be me. And I was like, oh, my apologies. Present company excluded. So it was then that I realized, I ran into my first hardcore left-leaning Democrat that supported the Second Amendment. And that's one of the things that I love about the DC Project, is that, everybody in our ranks, and there's a lot of left-leaning Democratic people who understand that the Second Amendment is for them too, and it's for everybody. And it is a nonpartisan issue. It hasn't been until the past, I'd say, 5-10 years that it has become a strictly partisan issue.
Mm-hmm.
So their voices are even probably more important than ours to remind their own that this is a nonpartisan issue, that the Constitution, and that, if you really do believe that Donald Trump is a Nazi, the last thing you should be doing is proposing that we disarm our society. So.
Absolutely. The logic train. What's that?
That's my partisan speech.
Yeah. Well, that's where the logic train just keeps jumping the tracks for me, is that, we're being told that, our president is evil, and we're being told that, white supremacy is on the rise, and it, people are marching down the streets, and I'm thinking, and that's the rhetoric that you're using to somehow convince people that we need to vilify our guns, give up our guns. I can't marry the two together in my mind. But it is an interesting process.
It doesn't make sense to me either, but
no.
That's why we leave it up to our girls that lean left to take the message back to their own community.
For sure. It has got to be highly frustrating. So for me, I am a single issue voter. So it's the Second Amendment, period, end of story. And then if I have, multiple candidates that seem pretty well aligned on the Second Amendment, well, then I'll start considering other things. And so if that were the case for me, and I happen to otherwise be a left-leaning voter, I would be left completely without a candidate, right? And so
Sure.
Then it makes me wonder, what is going to happen when people get into the ballot box and it's just them and the pen, or them and the little computer, however they do their voting? I have to believe that there's going to be people that vote for, remove the name of the candidate. They vote for the issue, and they vote for the candidate that is going to protect and preserve and hopefully try to restore our Second Amendment protections. Because even that, a lot of times people get it confused, right? Well, our rights, the Constitution gives us our rights. That's not the case.
No.
It's a protection. It
guarantees that government won't infringe upon those rights.
Absolutely. So how much of the DC project is a learning journey for women? So for me, I didn't feel like, well, I better get learned up about things before I can ask you and beg you if I can be a delegate. But once I became a delegate, I realized that there's a huge part of my responsibility as a citizen to know everything that I should know, and to have, actually read the Constitution. There's so many people that have never even read it, and it's tiny. It takes like an hour to read it. What has been your experience with the delegates you brought on? Do you feel like, they're already really learned in these things, or is it kind of like when you go to Bible study, you're facilitating along with others?
I would say the latter. And I talk to, I pretty much talk to everybody who's come on board, and there are no requirements when it comes to being learned in the Second Amendment or in the Constitution. These ladies have to have a heart and a pocketbook to do this on their own. They have to have the time, but they just need to share their story. The DC Project is about sharing their personal story about why the Second Amendment is important to them, and so it doesn't require a huge background in, the theology, the learned part of the Second Amendment. So, but there is I know that I have learned more, and I've heard other people, say that they have learned more, and now we're trying to incorporate some studies when it comes to being prepared once we go to Capitol Hill. So it's not that, it's more about the relationship, but we definitely do want to be educated on the issues and be able to talk with some intelligence about the topic.
Absolutely. And I think all of your delegates, definitely, they speak from their own personal experience, which is so impactful and so powerful, and kind of, pulls it away from the talking points and the sound bites and the other stuff. It's just, I want you as my representative to know me so that you can represent me, because a lot of them, they don't even know that gun owners aren't all 50 and something year old camo wearing bearded dudes, right? They don't even know. What's that?
Cut off sleeves, missing teeth.
Yeah.
And that
The
was
stereotype.
one of the, you know, the women of the DC project really do break the stereotype when it comes to what a gun owner looks like. So not only are we sharing our stories, but we're really, you know, revealing. You used the word ordinary in your speech recently, and I was like, we are ordinary Americans.
Mm-hmm. Ordinary warriors, for sure. That's one of my favorite talks that I give, because I think it is that ordinariness that is very empowering to us, because we understand that we don't have to have a PhD in the Constitution and have run for office ourselves or anything like that in order to be impactful, and in order to reach out and start engaging with our representatives. So just start where you are and move from there. So when you talked about pocketbooks, oh, go ahead.
No, I wanted to kind of talk about where we want to go with the DC project. Is I really want to have each of our women go back down into their state level and do the same thing at the state level. It's not going to be as big a commitment. It's not going to be as financially strapping as the trip to DC. But if they could just go and be a face and form those relationships there. But don't wait on us. Don't wait on, if you hear this and you're inspired to do something, take a couple of friends, go down, make an appointment with your legislator. Your federal legislators have offices in the state somewhere. So, and then don't forget to do the same thing with your state legislators as well as your local legislators. I mean, really, it's about, we have been allowing really corrupt, crooked people who don't align with us. We've been allowing people to run for office and take charge. So it's time for us to be responsible enough to go out and be heard, run, and take those positions back. Good people.
Absolutely. And the local elections are so important, because a lot of times people will, get on like the city council or something like that, just as a way to start their political career. And
Right.
One of the elections we had a few years ago, somebody was asking me, would I help, get the word out about him? And I said, well, here's my lane. I am the Second Amendment, period. So even though this is a city council thing, and that's not going to be a hot button, and you're not going to be making decisions necessarily on the Second Amendment, I need to know where you stand on that before I can help spread the word and help you build your base of voters.
Right.
So what? We're friends. Great, we're friends. And we can disagree on things, but if you want me to actually use my influence to help you influence others,
Right.
kind of need to know where you stand on something as important as the Second Amendment. So these local small elections really do have impact immediately and farther down the line. So I encourage people to pay attention. So I was going to get back to the pocketbook thing. You said that your delegates need to have enough of a pocketbook to participate. That's not because we pay dues to the DC project. That's because this is an actual, real, true,
once a year.
Well, that's true, right? This is a real, true.
Once a year, I ask you to pay your dues and get yourself to Washington, D.C. Yep. For the first time this year in 2019, we became a 501c4. So that allows us to be a nonprofit, but it's not the tax-exempt nonprofit. And we have actually started trying to do fundraisers. So we had a team match, a team 3-gun match, because that's kind of my realm and that's how I know how to do things. So we did that. We had a great success. Everybody had a good time, but we raised enough money that I could pay for all the hotels for the ladies when they came to Washington, D.C. And that's important, because if people are doing this on their own dime and their own time, I don't mind not compensating them for their time, but when it comes out of their own pocket to get there, it's really easy for them to say, something came up last week and I can't make it to the trip this week. And that leaves that state completely empty. So when I can help out, when the DC Project Foundation now can help out and make sure that those ladies are at least not taking anything out of their pocket, that's huge from my perspective as a manager. And I don't, and it's still, so, and there's so much to do. There's time is of the essence, and I really do want to blow this up and take it down to the state level, get a better website, hire somebody full-time to do this, because I do not have time to do this as to the extent that I feel like it would be effective. So there's so much going on right here, but we do have to up our fundraiser. And you, my friend, are doing the first fundraiser reception that we've ever done. So if any of your listeners, I'm sure if they follow you, they know that next Thursday night, the 19th, at your business, AZ Firearms, we are having a DC Project Foundation reception. So come hang out, meet some of the women that go. We've got several people in town for the Gun Rights Policy Conference, and meet several of the people, the women that go, hear their stories. You're going to do a little panel. And am I stealing your thunder here?
Not at all. Go.
Okay. Yeah, so it's we have tickets on Eventbrite, DC Project Reception, and come hang out. The tickets are only $20, but I hope that you're inspired to do even more. Oh, I'll have shirts. I've got the new fall shirts, 3/4 lengths. It says legislate, and it's crossed out with educate. And then we have a new, if you haven't seen the DC Project logo, it's kind of cool.
Very cool.
Robin Sandoval, Miss Texas, did that, and that's on the back, but the front is a wordle, and it has all sorts of different words in it about what the Second Amendment means to us. And then we've got a cute little football jersey with the sleeves with the DC Project logo on the front.
I love it.
Those are the 3 fall shirts.
So that
we're trying to sell those to raise.
That is the Capitol Dome, that logo in Washington, D.C., which we hold a rally at the end of each of our weeks in DC, right at the foot of that building, that dome. And I just love that, she's taken the dome and the profile of a woman. And it's so powerful. And I love all of those shirts. So do people have to wait till the reception, or is there a way online that maybe they could buy those up now?
Well, they can, they're not like in my cart right now. I just got them, and I'm at my folks' house. So I've got 3 big old boxes here, and I'll be back home next week, but then I'm going to go to your place. So it'll be a while for them to get online. But they can message me, and I can ship them out. Of course, I'll bring a bunch of them to the reception and the Gun Rights Policy Conference. So I'll have them there. And but if they want them now, or they want me to ship them to them, they can DM me on Instagram. I'm Die3Gun, and on Facebook, my athlete page is Dianna Muller 3Gun. So I'm all over social media. And even the DC Project is as well. So on Instagram, it's DC Project Foundation. I think it's DC_Project Foundation. And then I'm on Facebook, it's the DC Project, if you type that in. And then you can DM me anywhere on there, and I can ship some shirts to you. We'll just take your money.
Right. And on your guest page on Gun Freedom Radio, you go to gunfreedomradio.com, click the guest tab, find Dianna. I'll put the link on her guest page as well. And Dianna is with 2 N's, and Muller is with 2 L's, Muller. Easy to find. So yeah, this reception is going to be wonderful. And it is the first pancake. So, we're kind of making it up as we go, but I think there was no way to not try to seize on having so many of our delegates in the same place at the same time, because the Second Amendment Foundation, every year they put on the Gun Rights Policy Conference, and it travels. This year it happens to be in my home state of Arizona, and it is over the weekend of September. Well, our reception is, like you said, Thursday the 19th, 2019, and then the rest of the weekend will be the Gun Rights Policy Conference. And while we are a fundraiser, and we're going to be, full disclosure and shamelessly hoping to encourage you to help us out financially with our venture, the Gun Rights Policy Conference is free, and it brings together people from all over the nation like our delegates, to encourage one another and talk about what's going on in their state and talk about what our challenges are nationally for our constitutional rights. And so it's just a wonderful weekend of just freedom-loving people of every political persuasion coming together. I can't encourage you enough to come out to the reception if you can. It'll be in Avondale, Arizona. And I mean, who doesn't love a good selfie with somebody that you admire? So I'm always grabbing, multiple selfies with Dianna. So get ready for that. So I wanted to talk to you about, the grassroots angle of this and how, I think that word has been completely misused over the last few years, and it's lost its true meaning. And so when we are trying to shamelessly encourage people to buy the t-shirt, to spend the $20 to come to the reception, and then hopefully also make a separate donation, the reason that those things are so important is because, yes, thank God, my husband and I have had the wherewithal and the freedom to step away from our business, which a lot of people don't even have that. They don't have a big enough staff or whatever, that I could dive into this project and really give it my all. But there are some people out there that have just as much passion as I do, but maybe they don't have the money to travel, right? And so for those people, to help bring them into this world, every dollar is stretched so far. We are such a thrifty group. I don't know if anybody can understand. We don't stay at fancy hotels. We don't go eat fancy meals. We are just about trying to be together.
That's true. And you started that out with grassroots. And I really do. I mean, I knew what that meant, but now that I've seen it in practice, I have a much different respect for it. We go to Washington, D.C. once a year, and I get ideas. I mean, I've been stealing ideas from the antis for the past 4 years. Every time I go there, it's like, oh, I want to get some messaging. And that's another thing that I want money for, is that I want, when we go there, or maybe even every other month or however much we can afford it, I want to see pro-gun messaging driving around. I want to see some kind of pro thing stuck in the ground across the street from the Capitol building. I want to, we see those things. People who rely on, giving their yearly donation to the NRA or gun rights policy or, whatever they support, they don't understand what exactly the enemy is doing. And we get to see that firsthand. So this really, I feel like, I can't say it because it's us, but they can trust us, that we are like 100% focused on getting the message out and making the relationships and protecting the Second Amendment. That is our only goal. So, if people are curious, I would hope that they would investigate, but they can trust that their $20 or their $20,000 is going to go straight to, I want to pass out food and water when they get off the subway, like we see the antis, 10 of them dressed in the same shirt, handing out food. I mean, we are battling a very well-funded and well-organized machine. Mm-hmm. And I feel very little when I get off the subway and I see this, and I know that they are influencing people, and that we have to do the same thing on a no budget. So that's why we're upping our fundraising, is that there are, all the organizations that are kind of doing their piece, but I feel like we kind of can be another piece, a very instrumental piece of preserving and protecting our rights.
Absolutely. And so when you talk about like the bus, this past year, while we were there in 2019, just before the DC Project met in DC, I had been to a huge gathering of patriots in Delaware. And there was a bunch of them, and Delaware and DC are not that far apart. but there was a bunch of the
Right.
people in that audience that truly wanted to come and support us at our rally. But it was a matter of, just organizing a ride, basically. And so where we
Right.
were thinking, we
Right.
would love to be able to pay for a bus to get these people here, and they would say, we'd love to get there, but we need somebody to pay for a bus. That is part of what this kind of fundraiser is going to be able to do, because the enemy, as you say, they're not the enemy of me personally. They're not the enemy of Dianna personally. They're the enemy of our rights. They're the enemy of preserving what our founding fathers fought, bled, starved, and died for. That those people that are the enemies of that, they do have money for buses. They do have matching t-shirts and lunch to hand to everybody. And so what it looks like
Exactly.
is that there's more of them. Go ahead.
Well, and they have the money. I think it goes a step further. We have those people who have the same heart that we do, but I honestly, from what I have seen from people and stories I've heard, is they go to a anti-gun rally, and 10 minutes beforehand, there's nobody there. And they have bus after bus after bus. They get off, they go get their, they do their signs, they do the rallies, they do whatever it is, and they turn back. And I'm like, maybe some of those people believe in, but are they paying them? I think it's very possible that they're just bodies.
Yeah.
And whether they believe it or not, they're still getting the same message across, is that there's, thousands of people here. So we just, we're baby steps. If we can provide buses from, especially those northeastern states that are close to DC, if we can provide buses for patriots who actually love the Second Amendment and they want to get there to the rally, that's definitely something that's on my list.
Absolutely. And, our first year when you had us join together in DC, our rally, it was little, but it was real, right? It was people who were there out of their own passion, out of their own pocketbook. And then the next year it grew, and the next year it grew. So you have had incredible success in a short amount of time, not only capturing people's hearts and minds who want to be a part of what you're doing with the DC project, but also people who want to, like, maybe they can't be the delegate for Arizona because I'm already the delegate for Arizona, but I want to do something, right? You have had incredible success, and I want you to talk about that. Like, as we're going into these offices and talking with legislators on both sides of the fence, you've had incredible success. But the optics of it, like you said, it looks like, well, it's just a handful of, they're just fringe. Oh, it's just a few, right? When
Right.
it really isn't. We just need some finances to help get the people where they want to be. Like we said, that Delaware crowd. Here's what I want to say about Delaware. Delaware gun rights is 1 year old. They have 25 or 28,000 members.
Wow.
And those were the people I was talking to when I went to make a speech. And those were the people that do support what you're doing. They do support the DC project. We just couldn't get the bodies gathered together and organized because we didn't have the bus. Could you imagine if we could just put the grease in the financial wheels and bring these people together? And Connecticut has a passion. Virginia has a passion.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, all those states that are right there together. And the reason that Delaware gun rights became a thing, and then grew so quickly is because of the threat from the enemies of their Second Amendment rights. And so, sometimes the enemies, quote unquote, they're doing us a favor because they're waking us up out of our apathy. Our biggest enemy is apathy. So that's my little soapbox moment. But I do want you to talk about, the DC project. The lane is the Second Amendment. We care about all of our constitutional rights, but the lane is the Second Amendment. And then each individual delegate kind of is in a lane within that lane. talk to us about the delegates themselves, some of the incredible women who have come to join us, and then talk about when they sit down in front of their representatives or representatives, like when I go, I'm Arizona, but I'm in a team, you've got us in like teams of 4. And so somebody from New York will get to sit in an Arizona office and go, oh, wow, so this is what freedom sounds like? This is crazy. And then I go sit in the New York office and feel like I have to bite my tongue half the time because they say things like, it's not palatable for the police force, for the public to have firearms. And I'm like, I read the Constitution and the word palatable is nowhere in there, but I just smile. I just smile. I don't say anything.
Good girl.
Smarmy. Yes. But what I did do is I challenged him to look at Arizona as a real life, real time experiment in what happens when freedom is enacted, because we have constitutional carry here and our police force is plenty palatable for them because they know that they don't have as much crime to fight because an armed society is a polite society. And I caused a little bit of cognitive dissonance that day, and it was a little tiny win for me. I was like, high five me.
That's exactly what, that's a good word, the cognitive dissonant, because, it's incongruent with what they see on the TV and how they personally believe. And then we sit in front of them and it's like, she's articulate, she's pretty, she's a survivor, whatever it is. And you're right, the women that we have part of the DC project, there's several women that have survived horrible things that happened in their life, and their stories are very powerful. But we have left, we have right, we have up, we have down, we have brown, we have black, we have white, we have Asian, Filipino. It's just, I talked about it earlier, it's a cross section of America. We have transgender from California. We have, we have hunters, sports shooters. Yeah. We just have people from every walk of life. So grandmothers, daughters, down to 11 years old this year to mid 70s, I want to say. So yeah, I couldn't be more proud of, you say it's my baby. Well, I'm going to give this to God because I couldn't have, this wasn't my vision. I wouldn't have done it this way. I would have screwed it up.
Well, it's definitely, I'm a practicing Christian. So in my terminology, I would say it's a blessed venture, that it feels that doors have opened that are bigger than what we human beings could have just opened. So I appreciate that you said that. So the other thing I want to talk about is that, we're in a weird moment in history. I heard once that, that saying that may you live in interesting times is actually a little bit of a dig, actually a little bit of a curse, and by interesting, I mean like everything's total craziness, which feels like the times we're living in. They are very indeed interesting. And so we have, this huge organization, the NRA, they're going through a rough patch, right? That story is still unfolding. We don't know who the heroes are, who the villains are. We don't know all the ins and outs, but they're going through a rough patch. We have the president who the NRA supported, and so a lot of pro-2A, pro-Second Amendment people said, well, if you trust him, then we trust him. And he stood up and said, I will never endanger your Second Amendment rights. Well, and now he has said some things.
Bump stocks.
Yes, except for bump stocks. Yeah, bump stocks.
That doesn't concern me. Yeah. That what I look at is the big picture, and the two conservative Supreme Court justices that he's keeping his promise there. Mm-hmm. He's also a businessman and a negotiator, and he understands that he has to give something up. So I think that's where he comes from. He may have not been in the Second Amendment space much at all, but understands a very surface level of it. So, and I think he hears us. I think when he calls and talks to whomever he's talking to, whether it be the NRA or his son, I think that he will back off things once he, gets the information. Is he do I support the bump stock thing? No, absolutely not. Do I support any kind of anything that's coming up right now? Red flag, universal background checks, assault weapons ban, blah, 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 any of it? No, because I don't think it's effective, and I don't think it's going to do anything to make us safer.
Right.
In my opinion, being safe is me being my own first responder and being able to protect myself. So with the great equalizer. So what was the question?
So, yeah, all of that you said, but where I was kind of thinking in my mind was that we tend to want to sit back and rely on somebody else to get these things done for us, right? So I have actually heard people say out loud, well, I wrote my check to the NRA, so I'm done. I did my part, right? I voted for the Second Amendment president. I did my part. This moment in time, where these two very big, very public entities, the presidency and the NRA, having these hopefully just blips on the radar when it comes to our Second Amendment protections, that tells me that you are on the right track to reach out to individual people, that ordinary warrior piece. Reach out to individual people and help empower them and help them to understand how big of a voice each person really does have. Because the only thing our founders promised us was that it would require eternal vigilance to try to keep this republic. And so that it was kind of where I was heading. And I'm happy so much for everything that you said, because all of that is very important as well. But we really need to come back to the basics of understanding that what you do and what I do in my lifetime will have reverberating effects into the lives of the children and the children's children of this nation.
Well, and I think that, we focus on the legislators, but we're really losing the messaging is the messaging of the public opinion. We're losing in that court. So when those antis are congregated at the top of the subway exit and they're handing you food and things like that, they're influencing their messaging. Everybody, they're not just focusing on the politicians. So that's really who we need to be talking to. We need to be talking to our neighbors, our relatives, our kids, our teachers. We have to plug back into society, even though they hate us, even though they spew hate towards us. We have to stay connected and plugged into them in order to get that cognitive dissonance going. This doesn't equal what I see on the nightly news about gun owners. I know Cheryl Todd, and I know that she's a good human. So it's really important that not only do we do the DC project, the relationship thing with our legislators, but with our community as well. So that's why it's so important for us to get plugged back into, our community. Go to people who don't go to church, don't have any community, honestly. They might have the school community, but you really don't have a family or somebody that has similar ideals anywhere. And our technology these days makes it more difficult for us to be personable. You can always attack each other online, and that makes it's a lot easier to do that than to be hateful and rude. So, and it's really hard, I think, for our community. A lot of people, if you're not prepared to have that conversation and you don't have the mindset to be kind and outreach, then you're going to punch back with name calling and hateful and rudeness in return, which doesn't do anything for our cause. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely. And just even the microcosm that you have brought together with the DC project, like you said, it was so much easier to just pop off with something that, rude about liberal leaning people until you had that human being in front of you that you otherwise liked, right? And then you're like, oh, wait, I didn't realize quite what I was saying and how I was saying it, that has personally helped me as I'm crafting messages with my show and speeches, because it makes me more honest to staying in that middle space and speaking to people who really, they haven't quite figured out, are guns evil? Are they good? Like, I'm not quite sure. And I'll find myself writing a sentence, and then somebody like Lara Smith will pop into my mind, and I'll think, can I make that same point and use different words? And if I can, then when I'm sitting in the office of a representative who is disagreeing with my entire life, right? I'm a Christian, I'm a gun owner.
Your sole purpose.
What's that?
Yeah, your soul.
Yeah. Then it helps me to be, to speak in better ways, so that I don't automatically put myself in that other category that they might be tempted to put me in. And I think—
And dismiss.
Dismiss.
To dismiss.
Absolutely. So I think that that's incredibly powerful, and to encourage us to reach out and talk to our neighbors, and not first try to figure out online, well, are they conservative or are they liberal? So that I know whether I want to talk to them or not. No, just go talk to them and be humans first, and then weed through the other stuff later. Well, we need to probably start wrapping up. I've kept you. You're at your parents'. It looks very woodsy there where you are with your—
I'm working. So I'm lucky to have a week right now to kind of catch up and work from anywhere. And so I choose to do it for my parents this week.
Well, that's very nice.
And I'll see you next week.
Yes. That's what I want to wrap up with. I want to talk again, tell folks again, how can they learn more about the DC Project? How can they support the DC Project? And how can they come out and see you and I and get selfies with us at the reception?
Okay. So you can learn more about the DC Project at dcproject.info. Very easy. It talks about the project, and there's also a donation button, and there might even be a shirt on there, but we have more shirts, like I said. And then for the reception next week, we have an Eventbrite page. It's the DC Project reception, and I'll take you to tickets. They're $20. And just bring more than that. We're going to try to get it.
I like how you said that. It's only 20, but in full disclosure, we are going to
really want more.
But it is for freedom. It's for liberty. It's for talking to our representatives and helping them to better represent those of us who are passionate about our right to keep and bear arms. And that right, that is, the Bill of Rights isn't telling us what we're allowed to do, right? It's telling the government, oh, that's the firewall. You've got to stay on that side of it. You're not supposed to be, right, talk to the hand. You're not supposed to be anywhere on this side of that amendment. And they have crept in, around, under, and through time and time again with their common sense, their feel good, their, law upon law. And if you care about that, that takes time and effort and work, and we encourage you to do it yourself, everyone listening, everyone watching. But you can also empower others, like those of us in the DC Project, by, that next cup of coffee you were going to buy, or maybe your coffee budget for the year, whatever, however the spirit moves you.
$1 million. We'll take $1 million.
That's right.
I can spend $1 million. It might take me, actually, I'm really good with money. We've got, we made money at the fundraiser this year, but we didn't spend it all on that one trip. So we wanted to make sure that we had, I always have to have padding, and I feel like my credit score is really good.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And we are very thrifty, and we care very much about being good stewards of what's been entrusted to us. And so anyway, donate often, right? Donate deep, all those things. Huh?
I'm not a salesman, so.
No. Well, you don't
This
have
is
to
as
be
much of
good.
asking for money as I've ever done. Huh?
I said you don't have to be a good salesman, but I know it is a hard thing to ask for money. I don't know why that is.
I don't like it. I mean, I've asked in this little podcast, I've asked for money more than I have in, I'm just usually like one of those things that sits back and waits for people to approach me or whatever, but no more. I'm ready to, we're going after it.
It's too important. And that's the thing. That is what this interesting time that we're living in has shown us. It is too important to sit back and hope that other people support us and see what we're doing. We have to start speaking up more and saying, hey, we are facing a vote any day now, really. We're sitting here, it happens to be September 11th of 2019, and just the significance of this day alone, where we said we would never forget. Well, we forget tons of stuff all the time. We forget what our founding fathers did, why they did it. And once we wake up and
think about those 18 to 25-year-old kids that have no really idea of what it felt like to wake up and see the second plane hit, because that was about the time we got up in Central Time. And I'm like, what are we telling our kids, or are we basking in that freedom too much? And we have to, those founding fathers, oh my gosh, they were so smart, refresh the tree of liberty. And that's what it's going to, I believe them. I don't want to do it, but I believe it's true.
Absolutely. Well, the work that we do now is hopefully to head off all the stuff they had to go through, right?
Right.
They didn't have any choice in the matter. The nation grew the way that it grew, but they gave us the most rare opportunity that's been known on this planet, and we do treat it like it's cheap nowadays, and shame on us, honestly. Even those of us that are working hard for it. I should have been tapped in sooner in my life, but I've got my daughter, thankfully, is one of those millennials. She hates it when I call her a millennial, Cassie, but she gets it. She understands. She understands hard work. She understands that she stands on the shoulders of those that came before. And so she will instill that in my two little granddaughters when the time comes, when they're old enough. And when we go to DC, I go as 3 generations, right? I got my whole little family entourage.
I know. I can say when the time's right. I mean, Ray's been with us for, the whole time. Every time you go, she's there. So you're not waiting for the time to be right. She's steeped in it from the beginning. So we appreciate that for you and your family.
Well, for this opportunity, I wouldn't have done it if it weren't for the DC Project, and it is changing my family legacy to be a part of this program, and that's how important it is. So Dianna Muller, thank you so much for your service. I don't think I mentioned at the beginning, you were a 22-year veteran of the Tulsa, Oklahoma Police Force. Thank you for that service. Thank you for empowering and your continued service that empowers people like me and all of our 50 plus women, one from each state, that are part of the DC Project.
Well, I thank you for that, and I thank you for all the work that you do, because you have a tireless energy that is contagious, and it really does feed our group.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, stick around. There is always lots more coming up on Gun Freedom
Radio.
Bye now.